Do you ever get the ick? Of course you do. It's become a very popular term used to describe people who put you off. We all have our own thing that makes our skin crawl. Men who are like 5'8" but swear they're over 6 feet. Icky. Guys who rage at video games. Cringe. People who can't seem to take no for an answer. Do I even have to say anything? Well, whatever your ick is, something we all have in common is that we discovered it through personal experience. So when A Condition Called Love started airing, its first episode alarmed many viewers. And it wasn't some side character having a weird relationship that put him off, it was the main couple and the draw of the series. Was it people just being shocked at a first impression, or was it really as bad as people made it out to be? Does A Condition Called Love romanticize toxicity? Alright, so to briefly summarize A Condition Called Love, it's a romance anime about blind love. When Saki Hananoi broke up with his girlfriend in public, our main character Hotaru Hinase was the only one who cared enough to reach out to him in the snow and provide an umbrella. For Hananoi, this was love at first sight. In his mind, he was polite and clear about his intentions when breaking up with this other girl. To him, love means devoting your entire life to the person you hold near, and maybe his love simply wasn't good enough for her. We don't really get any other context from the relationship other than Hananoi's point of view of the breakup. He simply didn't think it was gonna work out. At this moment, we as the audience can only speculate and sympathize on either behalf. Was Hananoi mature to see the greater picture and break up with her? Or is he only thinking about himself without considering her feelings? Whatever the case may be, he clearly did not feel fulfilled, so he instantly grew attached to Hotaru's kindness. So much so that later that day, he proposes his love to her at school in the middle of the class. And Hotaru, who has never felt love before, has to think for herself if love is something that actually interests her. Sounds like your typical setup to a middle-of-the-road romance story. This would be the part where I tell you that A Condition Called Love is somehow different and how it's totally not like the other girls. But truthfully, A Condition Called Love is not different. This can either be to the series' credit or detriment depending on how you view it. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't initially put off by the first episode. It'd be one thing if Hananoi said he loved her and she turned him down or accepted his proposal right there, but it was Hananoi's insistence on the relationship throughout the episode that made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I felt wary of Hotaru and her lack of experience when she caved into his request. Like I said, people who don't seem to know boundaries or accept no for an answer, you should probably stay away from them. If they go on a rant about how people get all sorts of weird impressions of them, there might be a good reason for it. If they do all of these things for you only to receive nothing in return, that's on them. You don't owe them anything. Chances are they might be trying to lower your guard in order to manipulate you. As an adult, I don't like the idea of unrequited love because more often than not, it'll just end up hurting you more than anything, and you'll be subjecting the other person to stuff that they didn't sign up for. I've been through it enough times to learn that lesson on my own. Then it suddenly clicked for me. That's the point. Rewatching the first episode became a completely different experience when I removed myself from the equation. These are teenagers discovering things about themselves. What to me seemed like potentially dangerous wish fulfillment turned out to be an endearing story about young romance. But it also got me thinking, why didn't it strike me sooner? Is it bad writing if the series was giving me mixed signals? I don't think so. I believe this to be very intentional. The reason I discovered why Hananoi put me on edge was because the show gave me no reassurance about his intentions. AJ from Anime News Network wrote, "I feel like the audience has too much information about Hananoi and not enough at the same time." I thought this was a pretty good way of putting it. But I also wanted to challenge that idea and inspect why the series was written that way. The conclusion I came to with that idea was because there was no inner monologue painting his thoughts. Looking at another show for comparison, the opposite approach of this would be something like His and Her Circumstances. It's a series that revels in introspection and is not shy about letting you know what the characters are thinking. The thing about internal monologue is that it has the benefit of showing the audience completely unfiltered thoughts of the characters. Thoughts which are otherwise repressed from being uttered in social situations. Honesty is not always pretty. This train of thought goes both ways for the main leads as well. Having this insight into the character's psyche makes it so the audience is always several steps ahead of either one character separately. It's like watching a stage play and seeing the world around you freeze in time, giving room for a single thought to breathe, letting you ruminate on this emotional state and reflect on yourself, almost slipping into a trance of your own consciousness, isolated from the rest of the world as you connect the dots to your own life experiences. This philosophy of writing is something that director Hideaki Anno does in nearly all of his major projects. It would only make sense that he developed a shoujo series one day, and His and Her Circumstances stands tall as one of the greatest in its genre still to this day. And if you took out that introspective perspective, it would fundamentally alter the show, if not completely break it. A Condition Called Love, despite being in the same genre and belonging to the same demographic, obviously has completely different goals. No writing style is inherently superior. A Condition Called Love, at first, appears to appeal to the kind of people who want a mysterious and, highly fixable boyfriend that they can take care of. I was group watching Slam Dunk recently with my patrons, and we found Rukawa really cute because he's so reserved and effortless. The mystery is part of the appeal, so you want to withhold as much information from the viewer as possible. Hananoi doesn't quite fit that mold though, because he's so overtly open about his emotions. He doesn't fit into the cocky, high-energy type guy with a lot of confidence either, like Sakuragi. So could I really trust him in good faith when he was radiating nice guy from top to bottom? In terms of what we know about him, the audience is mostly put on the same page as Hotaru, a teenager who has never properly experienced romance. Somebody whose only exposure to it comes from hearing her friends talking about their relationships. Your mileage may vary, but chances are if you're into romance anime, you've either been in a relationship or had crushes before. Not Hotaru. This can create a cognitive dissonance for the audience where we insert our bad experiences or possible traumas into this scenario. We see ourselves in her friends and wish we could reach through the screen to give her a reality check. Having felt that way myself, I want to take you through my experience watching A Condition Called Love, and how I went from being a skeptic to becoming a fan. Author Megumi Morino wanted to write a love story where the characters start from the bottom. This is the blueprint for A Condition Called Love. Hananoi may have more dating experience than Hotaru, but he is obviously a maladjusted and troubled person. Hotaru is oblivious to romance, but she has friends by her side. It's not like Hotaru needs to have romantic feelings towards anybody to be happy. She could live her life happily as an Arrow Ace queen, and we would still love her for that. But she becomes interested in love because she sees it as a beautiful concept as long as that feeling is mutual, that you can truly care for someone else and enrich their life. Right now, it's a very one-sided relationship. Hananoi is the one putting in way more effort into everything he does. Earlier in the episode, there was a scene where Hananoi was asking Hotaru about what kind of things she liked. Simple questions like, "What kind of hairstyles are you into?" are met with simple answers like, "Well, I guess short hair is easier to wash." And it then escalated when Hananoi shows up the next day with his haircut short to match what he believes to be Hotaru's preference. Hananoi takes these tiny context clues to make something much bigger out of it. Hotaru looking at a poster for a pork bun advertisement turns into Hananoi buying that same pork bun for lunch. She's thankful for it, but she doesn't want to eat it alone, so she splits it in half for Hananoi. This scene ends up setting the stage for the rest of the series. Instead of having this delicious pork bun all for herself, Hotaru wants to share it and become Hananoi's equal. She wants to feel what he feels and open up a new opportunity for self-discovery. So she tries to catch up to Hananoi's ambitions. She thinks about leaving for school 30 minutes earlier, only to be met by Hananoi who shows up first. She tries again 45 minutes earlier. No chance. Okay, 2 hours. Now we're going somewhere. She manages to show up first, which causes Hananoi to have a realization. He's always first to show up, no one else has ever waited on him before. This is the only time a girl has tried to meet him on the same level. He gets a taste of his own medicine when Hotaru starts sneezing in front of him. Which, like, I need to address this real quick. Who goes outside in nothing but a skirt during wintertime? It's been at least 10 years, put on those galaxy leggings if you have to, they'll be fashionable again someday, trust me. But it's precisely that sneeze that becomes a wake-up call for Hananoi. He could see himself in Hotaru. She put herself in a vulnerable position, both emotionally by wanting to wait on him, and physically by staying out in the cold, something that Hananoi had gotten used to doing. He got to experience what it's like being on the opposite end. Them trading sneezes is yet another iteration on the split pork bun motif. Having people care for you is wonderful, but it should not be at your own expense. You know what else is wonderful? The thumbnail for this video, drawn by 𝙏𝙤𝙭𝙞𝙀𝙏. Go give them a follow. You can also join the ranks of the people on screen and support me on Patreon. Your contributions will go towards research material for various shoujo and magical girl series, as well as the art you see in these videos. AI can never capture the serenity seen in shoujo manga. Only the delicate touch of a human hand can bring out that beauty. And if you want to see more shoujo videos from me, please consider subscribing. Thank you for the consideration, and on with the video. An issue a lot of young couples run into is not fully knowing their boundaries. Not being clear enough can lead to a lot of misunderstandings and fights. Nobody wants to get hurt, but simultaneously you also need to be willing to make advances in the relationship for it to go anywhere. You don't want your partner to feel like a ball and chain attached to your leg, or be in that position yourself. Being too sensitive can make it feel like you're constantly stepping on eggshells. Therefore, many can find themselves holding back their emotions as a result of fearing how they will be perceived. Hananoi, despite being shown as altruistic in favor of others, still have emotions that need to be acknowledged. This inner desire for wanting more can be seen in his writing. Hotaru thought it would be a fun idea to trade notes as a way of making plans and taking it slow. While in person, Hananoi goes to write the simple request of wanting to walk hand in hand. But without Hotaru's gaze looming over him, he can be seen writing down his true desires at home. His trash bin begins to pile up with notes of what he cannot do yet. He can only think of Hotaru's teasing remark when she noted the tame nature of his request. It got to him. This moment is special because it's really the only time Hananoi gets to have any sort of internal monologue throughout the series. And it's not exactly pretty, but he knows it's not pretty. What he wrote down on those pieces of paper is where he wants to take the relationship. It's his goals. Goals that are yet within reach. A scene later on where Hananoi pins Hotaru down to the ground is him seeing a glimpse of his own inner desires in Hotaru. It's the end of the semester and Hananoi brings Hotaru home to his apartment. The calm before the storm comes with a string of weird occurrences. It is revealed that Hananoi has a shrine dedicated to Hotaru. Hananoi makes several more strange comments towards her. He is flexing his L-Riz, expecting her to walk out in case she's not interested. Actually, the scene is similar to the beginning scene at the cafe. Hananoi is a firm believer in the idea of soulmates, and he wants to meet his own. He has no intentions of only being friends with Hotaru. He is set in stone about forming a proper relationship and nothing else. Therefore, he is purposely being off-putting to give Hotaru an out if she isn't feeling the relationship. Straight up admitting, in most case scenarios, what she is going through can spell out trouble. But just as Hananoi is set in stone about his goals, Hotaru is still dedicated to the idea of discovering love. She proposes the idea of Hananoi kissing her, causing him to drop in shock and awe. When Hananoi gets on top of Hotaru in this scenario, it's practically a cry for help. He is acting on pure emotion. This scene is important because of what Hotaru took away from that experience. She starts having some deep self-reflection. It's easy to put the blame on Hananoi because he was the one pushing her boundaries, but Hotaru also sees fault in her own actions. She did what she had been criticizing Hananoi for, trying to be altruistic. The fact of the matter is, they both did something that they weren't proud of, and that's important. In her quest of trying to understand Hananoi, Hotaru got to feel what it's like to hurt someone you love. This to me is where Hotaru begins to really understand the scope of romance. She can be seen anxiously texting Hananoi after this incident and looking for read notifications, something all too common among couples both young and old alike. all while Christmas Eve is only a couple days away and marking the end of their trial run together. She's been empathetic towards Hananoi this whole time, but checking her notifications like that, to me, signifies that there might also be some selfishness at play. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's these raw, visceral feelings that make a condition called love something special. Feelings you can only really get across by portraying some ugliness in the palette of vulnerability. I want to clarify that this video is by no means going to be a complete overview of the series. I think it's important to come away with your own unbiased outlook. I want this to be more like a soft introduction based on my initial impressions. The rest of the series is compelling in its way to realistically portray someone's first relationship, and the euphoric highs and devastating lows that come with it. Because when you're that young, everything carries a lot more weight. It's something I think we take for granted when we're adults. Like, how often do you see newcomers to anime complaining, why does every anime take place in high school? When I first got into anime, you would never hear the end of it. But it is that juvenile nature of youth that strengthens the writing quality of a lot of these series. Sure, something like Nana may be more mature in tone and even messier than A Condition Called Love, and if that's what you prefer, then that's great. But I think A Condition Called Love works for what it is because they're in high school. It's easy to imagine yourself in that position. I could sympathize with Hananoi because when I was a teenager, all I wanted was to be loved. I was lonely, rotting away playing video games all day. I don't exactly look back at my youth with much fondness. The day I upload this video, I will have turned 24. Sometimes I can't help but to feel like I pissed away my entire childhood on my fear of approaching people, which led me to be around a lot of bad people. All the time wasted and all the wrong moves I made. It can be tough to look back and imagine you were the same person, but that's the essence of growth. I want to close off this video by being a bit personal. A Condition Called Love really came along at a perfect time for me because not too long ago, I went through a breakup. The decision ended up being mutual, so I won't go into too much detail about the specifics, but it was my first really serious relationship, and I came out of it discovering a lot of new things about myself. So even though I was unhappy, I felt like my time wasn't wasted. I've known friends who have been in sunk cost fallacy relationships before. At some point, it stopped being about personal growth and more about remembering how things used to be before everything turned bad. Thankfully, I can say that was not the case for me, and among the bad times, there were also good times. And this is what I feel like A Condition Called Love really highlights. The fact that even though romance can be difficult, it's what you take away from it that matters. As another example, I saw Love Chunibyo and Other Delusions when I was maybe 18 and at the peak of my loneliness. It's a series I generally don't see people holding in too high of regard, but it came to me at a perfect time in my life. I was emotionally isolated, yet vulnerable, so a story about embracing your past in pursuit of a happy romance and healthier relationship with yourself is exactly what I needed. I can't change what I did in the past, but I had to learn to love myself if I wanted to have a chance of moving forward. Far too often, I would just crawl back into my shell if I did something I regretted. I ended up wasting a lot of time on self-loathing, which didn't help me progress as a person. I sometimes feel like I'm way behind everybody else, but we all have our own things we're going through. Now that I'm better at critical thinking, I have a better idea of what I want for myself. Teenage me would have wanted somebody exactly like them to minimize any potential risks and conflicts. What I want now is somebody who shares maybe a few similar values, but is otherwise completely different from me. Even if it leads to some complications, what I value is somebody who can challenge me with a different perspective. And in that sense, I think Hotaru chose well, and I wish her the best of luck. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourself.